Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide. A reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know Egypt was the first country to dig a canal to connect land for the benefit of world trade? Explore with us the overland routes, used by horse-drawn wagons, trains, vehicles, and ultimately canals and waterways that connected and colonized world trade in Africa and Europe.
Today we're jumping into a fascinating source stack, all focused on, believe it or not, just 120 miles of water.
Just 120 miles, but what a stretch of water.
Exactly. It redefined empires, slashed global voyages by thousands of miles, and, well, it remains one of the world's most critical trading bottlenecks, the Suez Canal.
That's absolutely the mission today. For you, we're going to unpack the essential history and impact of this incredible human project. We'll trace its story from, these almost mythical ancient ideas through the massive engineering challenges.
Monumental challenges.
And right into the really intense geopolitical drama. Think of nationalizations, wars, even secret naval stuff. It all shapes its history and why it's still so strategic today.
Okay, let's ground ourselves with the basics first. So the Suez Canal, it's a man-made waterway, cuts right through Egypt.
Connects the Mediterranean Sea to the Indian Ocean via the Red Sea.
And the key thing, the reason it exists, is that it gives you, quite simply, the absolute shortest sea route between Europe and Asia. Cuts out that massive journey around Africa.
And that shortcut has been, fundamentally changing the world since it officially opened back on November 17th, 1869.
10 years of construction, right?
10 years of really grueling work. And it ended up costing twice the original estimate. But the moment it opened, it immediately became the fastest way to cross from the Atlantic world to the Indian Ocean. And it still is.
What I find fascinating from the sources is that this idea, this dream of connecting the seas there, it's not modern at all. It's ancient.
Oh, absolutely. The interest goes back millennia. We're talking maybe 2000 BC, with early canals linking the Nile River to the Red Sea.
Canal of the Pharaohs, they call it.
Exactly. Impressive for their time, definitely. But they weren't the direct connection we have now. They depended on the Nile, which, has its own limitations.
Right. It wasn't that clean slice across the isthmus that global trade eventually really needed.
Precisely. And for centuries, building that direct cut was thought to be, impossible.
Right. What was the big roadblock? The physics problem.
It all came down to a mistaken belief about altitude. For literally centuries, people thought the Mediterranean and the Red Sea were at significantly different sea levels.
Which would mean?
Locks. Lots of complex, expensive locks like you see in the Panama Canal. It just made the whole idea seem far too difficult, maybe even impossible back then.
Until someone actually measured it properly. And this is where it gets really interesting, in the 1830s.
Yes, the turning point. It comes down to a French explorer and engineer, Leon de Belfond. He surveyed the Isthmus of Suez around 1830, and his key finding, the game changer, was that the two seas were actually at the same altitude.
No difference.
Basically none that mattered for a canal. This was revolutionary. It meant you could build a sea-level canal, no locks needed, an engineer's dream, really.
And the historical irony here is just amazing. Our sources point out Napoleon Bonaparte himself had looked into this decades earlier.
He did. He considered the project.
But he dropped it. Why? Because his surveyors got it wrong. They calculated the Red Sea was 30 feet higher than the Mediterranean.
Imagine that. A 30-foot error scuttled an emperor's grand vision. It just shows how critical good data is.
So Belfond clears up the science. What happens next?
Well, with the altitude myth busted, the modern project could finally begin. A French diplomat, Ferdinand de Lesseps, he really seized the moment. He formed the Suez Canal Company in the 1850s, got a massive 99-year lease for France.
99 years, that's quite the commitment.
It was, and construction kicked off in 1859. The scale of the excavation was just staggering, involved something like 1.5 million people over that decade.
An incredible number of people digging that trench. So when it finally opens in 1869, it must have been a huge, huge deal.
Oh, absolutely massive. The opening wasn't just a ribbon cutting, it was a global spectacle. Fireworks, a massive ball with 6,000 guests.
Heads of state from all over.
Exactly. It was basically announcing a new era of global connectivity.
The official first passage, that was the French imperial yacht, L'Aigle, right?
Oh.
Followed by a British liner, the Delta.
That was the official story. But our sources detail this slightly sneaky maneuver by the British just before the celebrations kicked off.
Ah, the secret passage. Tell us about that.
Right. So Britain, despite maybe some initial hesitation, knew this canal was strategically vital. They wanted to make their mark immediately. So a British Navy ship, the HMS Newport, under Captain George Nares, well, he essentially jumped the gun.
Oh.
He sailed the ship through the canal under the cover of darkness the night before the official opening ceremony.
Way. He just snuck through.
Pretty much. A very bold, very risky move to assert British presence right from the start.
What happened to him? You can't just do that.
Well, officially he was reprimanded, protocols and all that, but the sources are clear. Behind closed doors, the British government was secretly quite pleased. He'd staked their claim, promoted their interests.
It shows just how high the stakes were, right from day one. Even before the party started, the great powers were jostling for position.
Absolutely. And speaking of Britain, they weren't initially fans of the whole project, were they?
No, they were very critical at first. Word it would mostly benefit France, their rival.
They were, but that skepticism just melted away the second the canal proved its worth. They realized it was indispensable for connecting Britain to India and the rest of its empire.
So they did a complete U-turn.
A very fast one. They went from critics to major investors, buying up a 44% stake in the canal company not long after it opened. It highlights just how strategically vital it became, almost overnight.
That's a powerful indicator. So how busy was it in those early years? Did ships flock to it immediately?
Traffic is actually a bit slower than expected for the first couple of years. And interestingly, it was mainly steamships at first.
Why only steamships?
Sailing vessels really struggled. The canal is relatively narrow, and the winds in the isthmus can be quite tricky and unpredictable for sails. Steam power offered reliable passage.
But as steam took over shipping...
Exactly. Traffic ramped up significantly. And the impact on world trade was, well, profound. It reshaped trade routes, sped everything up, and, it has to be said, also accelerated European colonization efforts in Africa and Asia.
Before we get into the more modern conflicts, there's that amazing piece of trivia from the sources we have to mention.
Ah, yes, the Statue of Liberty story.
Right. Apparently, the original concept for the Statue of Liberty was for it to be a lighthouse. Not for New York Harbor, but for the Suez Canal.
Imagine that. Lady Liberty standing guard at port side. A very different landmark.
Definitely a fun what if. But, okay, by the late 1800s, the canal is clearly too important to be just a private French venture anymore.
Exactly. It needed international rules. It was a global choke point.
Which leads us to the Convention of Constantinople in 1888. What did that do?
So the major powers, Britain, France, Russia, Ottoman Empire, others, they all signed this treaty. And it essentially declared the Suez Canal a neutral zone.
Neutral
meaning it had to remain open to ships of all nations in times of peace and war. The treaty stressed respecting the free navigation. It enshrined the idea that the canal was a global utility.
A nice idea, neutrality. But reality often gets in the way, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Fast forward to 1956. This is a massive turning point.
The nationalization.
Yes. On July 26, 1956, Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser announces Egypt is taking over the Suez Canal Company. Control shifts from the European-dominated company to the Egyptian state under the new Suez Canal Authority.
And that didn't go over smoothly.
Not at all. It triggered the Suez Crisis. Britain, France, and Israel actually invaded Egypt. It was a huge international incident, really marked a shift in global power away from the old European empires.
And the canal's location meant it was right in the middle of regional conflicts, too, like the Six-Day War in 1967.
Right, and that led to one of the most unbelievable stories connected to the canal.
The Yellow Fleet?
The Yellow Fleet. So when the war broke out between Egypt and Israel in 67, Egypt closed the canal, blocked it, and caught mid-transit, unable to go forward or back, were 15 cargo ships from various nations.
Just stuck there, in the middle of the canal, in a war zone.
Completely stranded, blocked by sunken ships, mines, debris, and they stayed there.
How long?
For more than 8 years.
8 years.
8 years. They became known as the Yellow Fleet because the desert sand constantly coated them in yellow dust. The crews formed their own little community, held events, even issued their own stamps. They were finally able to leave in 1975 when the canal was cleared and reopened.
That's just incredible. 8 years waiting for a shipping lane to open. It really drives home the human cost when this vital artery gets blocked by conflict.
Absolutely. But despite these closures, despite the crises, the canal's importance has only grown, hasn't it?
Massively. Today, it's one of the most intensely used shipping lanes on the entire planet. The numbers are staggering.
They really are. Our sources say around 89 ships pass through every single day. That's roughly 20,000 ships a year.
Carrying how much cargo?
Over 300 million tons of goods annually. Everything from oil tankers to container ships packed with consumer goods. It's absolutely fundamental to global supply chains.
And even that wasn't enough for modern shipping. Egypt undertook a major expansion project recently.
That's right. In 2014, an $8 billion project to widen and deepen parts of the canal, and crucially, to create a parallel channel in some sections.
Why the parallel channel?
To allow for two-way traffic, basically. It cuts down waiting times, reduces transit times, and allows even the biggest modern container ships, the real behemoth, to pass through more easily.
And did it work? Did traffic increase?
Significantly. The data shows that in 2021, for example, over 20,600 ships used the canal. So that investment is paying off, keeping this 120-mile shortcut from port side down to Suez City absolutely vital.
So wrapping this all up, what's the big takeaway for you, the listener? The Suez Canal, it's like a concentrated dose of world history.
It really is. It starts with ancient dreams, becomes possible through a key scientific correction, and then immediately gets caught up in global power plays.
It's this incredible story of human ambition, engineering prowess, and, frankly, constant political struggle.
And it demonstrates how critical infrastructure isn't just about concrete and steel, it shapes geopolitics. From those early limited pharaonic canals to today's widened superhighway for ships, this route has fundamentally altered how the world connects and trades.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with, thinking about all that history of control and conflict over this single choke point. The Suez Canal shows us the power and the vulnerability of bottlenecks.
A single point can impact the whole system.
Exactly. So consider, where are the strategic bottlenecks in your own world, your work, your life, the single points of failure? And learning from the canal's constant need for expansion and security, what steps might you need to take to widen your options, secure your path, or maybe even find a way around that choke point? Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the Suez Canal's incredible story. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you for joining us for this day in his story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in his story now. To learn more, visit ahsworldwide.org